space, and the just is just put all the Liombo bus chat space. So I think it's important for speakers to pay attention to the chat space. We're going to be using 8 minutes. Same rules apply. First and last minute protected. 4 minutes reply.
Just clarify on that chat space. I think the other people will be on this second chat space, so I think you should just be clear to them that Abbas Liombo text space with the hashtag.
Okay, but I think they now know. So yeah, over to Chair.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So this is 8 minutes. So before you begin, please your POI preferences is very key, and make sure to say the timestamps and set aside your own time in case just there is something to flag in. So over to the first affirmative.
Hey, hopefully I'm audible, right?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, so my POI preferences, please don't ask me before the 5th minute. I don't like being interrupted inside my characterization. Please don't ask me for the 5th minute. Okay, so I'll be taking my POIs verbally. Do not type in the text space. I won't be looking at that. So just let me set my timer and I begin my speech. Okay, so hopefully I'm still audible. I'm going to be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Due to the lottery of birth, each and every individual is born with different financial capabilities. That is why we see some individuals able to access elite education facilities, while others not being able to access even the bare minimum. Aside government, we solve this problem. We propose this motion. 2 burdens within our speeches today. Firstly, we're going to show you why our world of the house gains us more benefits in all instances. And secondly, we're going to show you why our house isn't justified. What will I do in my speech? 2 things. I'm going to start off with context and characterization. And secondly, I'm going to move on to constructive arguments. To start off, 2 points to note in setup of this debate. Firstly, is to note how the world plays out currently. 4 things. A, students face significant financial challenges when applying to universities because of the hefty sums of money that are then put in order to get into these universities. We look at countries like the United Kingdom, where tuition can be over 600,000 euros, yet families' net income a year is mainly like 100,000 euros. Secondly, we tell you that parents spend a significant amount of their money taking students to school, but when they reach university, they pull out because this is due to the lack of amount of money or the lack of the financial capability to then pay for these universities due to the hefty sum. And you have to understand that one prerequisite for you to get jobs within status quo is you holding that bachelor's degree. And in most instances, these students never really access this bachelor's degree because they lack this university education. Thirdly, in majority of countries, you are not allowed to access education without clearing fees. What this does is that it then creates a gap between the poor who do not have that income to then pay for these universities and the rich individuals who have this income to pay for all the facilities that are needed to study. But also finally, in the minimal countries like the United States, students who face financial barriers are then given student loans, and this is basically what we stand for as type opposition. Now, this directly then takes us to our model. What does it basically look like? We think instead of universities pushing people to pay money before starting an education, you then pay a certain amount of money you can handle, and the rest is kept after you graduate. This essentially looks like you paying $1,000 at the start of the year, and after graduation, you agree on how long you want to pay that loan. It could be paying $100,000 per year, or it could be agreeing to pay $500,000 a year. It is totally up to you. 2 things that this then does. Firstly, this means that we do not strip you of all your money after graduation, but you give us some amount of money that you decide you'll be able to pay. But also secondly, notice that paying this loan only takes a part of your income after you have gained a sustainable income. And that is basically what we stand for. Side opposition can then not run arguments on how we take everyone's money and every amount of money that the student gets, but also secondly, how we do not give these students a chance to gain a sustainable income, because the premise of student loans is simple. We only take your income after you have then made some certain amount of money that we can cut off, and it is basically your choice. two arguments then that are going to be coming from my speech. Firstly, on how we get quality education on our side of the house. Secondly, how we get increased accessibility to higher education on our side. And in Jibril's speech, he's going to come and analyze how students then get increased focus on education and why this is important for the growth and development of students. Firstly, let's look at quality education as our first argument as affirmative. The premise of this argument is that due to the need of good results, individuals are pushed to improve their structures in order to make students to get these good results within the university boundaries. Why is this true? Three things. Firstly, we tell you that universities have two interests, which are firstly to get profits and secondly, to provide an education to people. On our side of the house, the only way universities can get this is when universities actually treat students well and universities give the students a good quality education, because the premise for these universities to get this money and these profits is for these students to go to school and these students to work hard and these students then gain that income to give back to the university. This then acts as an incentive to then push universities to provide this good education and to give these students this internship that is going to gain them the best benefits within society. Secondly, we tell you that there is continued interest for universities to innovate and better services to get top-notch students who can then pay back their money. And the impact of this is that then we get better resources within different universities in order to fulfill this sort of criteria, in order to get this money to pay back their structures. But also finally, we tell you that there is an incentive for students to actually work hard in order to be able to actually pay back these different debts. Why is this true? This is true because the only way you can then get the money to pay back these debts is you working hard, you attending majority of the lectures, and you putting in all the efforts in order to get that sustainable job that is going to give you income. This then emits tendencies of laziness within students. The impact of this argument is that firstly, we get a quality education. What is this quality education? This quality education looks like universities being able to give students the resources that they need. It looks like teachers being able to monitor students in order for those students to perform well in order to get that money. It looks like universities setting up different programs to introduce students to different job opportunities in order for the students to pay back. But also finally, and most crucially, it looks like the students putting in all that effort in order to get these good marks. This is something that you gain on our side. The importance of this is that firstly, it shows the net benefits that we get on our side, but secondly, it then proves our burden on how we then get more benefits within the vast majority of instances. But now let us look at their side. On their side of the house, universities' incentive to actually provide the best of education is then lowered. Why? Because they already get those profits at the start. They get those 600,000 euros at the start of the education. This essentially means that even if the students performs badly, it won't affect them even to the greatest of extent because they have already gotten this profit. But also secondly, notice that these are already big universities that have already gained the name. So they do not necessarily need the good performance to actually keep their name high because they already have this name. So basically on our side of the house, we get two benefits, which is basically these universities putting in the effort to give the students the incentive for these universities to monitor the students' growth within the school. And these are basically things that you do not necessarily get on their side of the house. Moving on to our second argument, where we tell you that we get more accessibility to education. The premise of this argument is that when you shift payment after school, you open windows for the different poor people to even access education. This is true because of three things. Firstly, we tell you the threshold for accessing education when you go to different levels becomes higher. The same money you pay at primary isn't the same you pay at secondary. But the reason why people can then access secondary education is because of things like public schools existing or UCE schools existing. But when you look at university education, there are not these sorts of opportunities within the vast majority of instances. This essentially means that students can then not access that education to the greatest of extent. But on our side of the house, we give them that sort of chance to access this education in the vast majority of instances. Yes,
Raima, we can't
is
hear
it only
you.
on my end
We've
or
lost
it's
you.
a general thing?
Pause
where
her
did you?
timer.
Okay.
But
Hi, am I audible?
can
Hi.
one of our partners probably try to locate her?
Hi, am I
People that are
audible?
not listening.
Hi.
Raima, you're audible.
I don't know why you lost me because my network says that I'm okay. I'm not sure now.
Okay, so it was after analyzing the sort of good performance incentive from the universities where they don't care about good performance.
Okay, was it after my first argument?
No, you are quite audible. You are audible until where you are analyzed. You have a name, so they do not care about the good performance.
Oh, so at which minute was that?
Yeah, so I think because you have 1 minute and I think that was 6:28. Sorry,
So
5:28. Yeah, 6:28.
Basically,
Okay.
bearing. You data score. That's what you.
So I have. Okay, I can reset my timer.
1 minute and 32 seconds.
Okay. Hopefully I'm audible. Well, let me just start myself in. Can I be heard by the chair too?
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
Okay. So I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. Notice that on their side of the house, they do not have this sort of incentive to make students get that good performance because firstly, they already have the money from the means they can build their structures and they've already gotten their profit incentive. But also, secondly, we tell you these universities already have a good name. Given the fact that they have this name, they do not necessarily need the good performance in order to get students to come to these universities. This then becomes harmful. But notice that on our side of the house, we have this sort of incentive for students to perform better to pay back these loans. But also, the prerequisite for these universities to get their money is to make the students perform well. On our second argument on how we get more accessibility to education, the premise of this argument payment after school, you open windows for poor people because of three things. Firstly, the threshold for accessing education becomes higher as you go higher in education. This essentially means that primary schools are less expensive than university schools. This is why we see different parents facing it hard to actually pay for education. We solve this by giving these poor parents a chance to actually give these students this good education and make their students come out of that generational poverty curse that they normally are in. But also, secondly, we foster a diverse university order where the poor can also integrate with the rich individuals. This then removes the gap between the rich and the poor. And says that government gives sponsorships. We tell you two things about them. Firstly, the number of people who access the sponsorships reduce according to like the way the government is moving. This is to say government start giving sponsorships to science students. But also secondly, even if it exists, the poor normally do not access these university sponsorships because there is a high entrance rate, which is basically students performing well. And these poor people do not necessarily have the resources to make them perform well. On our side of the house, we provided education for different students, an education that is very beneficial, an education that is good for them. I rest my case.
All right. We thank that speaker for that speech. I would like to call upon the first op to begin the speech. Here.
Okay, I want to confirm audibility, please.
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Okay. So before I begin my speech, I'll be taking my POIs directly, and that is after I'm done with my 5th minute and I'm done with everything that I have to do. Okay. Okay. I am starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Now, panel, notice one thing that the proposition part of the government has failed to, that has really run away from its kind of model. One thing that it has definitely run away from its model is how these universities will be collecting this amount of money. But we are very happy to show you this kind of model. The model is very clear, is these universities will be tasking some amount of profit and endeavored on this kind, because you have to really understand that some 5 years. And in countries like Uganda, whereby even unemployment is definitely being very high, there is no way how someone can have a guarantee of you paying this amount of money. So at a point in time whereby this is definitely a long period of time, it means that this is definitely treated as a loan. Hence, it means that it is going to be put an amount of interest to it. So they have to first come in their second speech and definitely justify to us how that is not going to happen. So this is going to definitely create two kinds of problems into their kind of the house. So this means that they will not entirely benefit anything afterwards because they are looking at a short-sighted way whereby they're seeing what is happening to them. But
just a moment, Prosper. Lost you
yes?
immediately you began. Do you mind restarting? Your timer will just be started.
Okay, so am I now audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you, madam. Okay, I am restarting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Now, panel, notice one thing that the proposition part of the government has entirely ran away from is the type of model and how they are going to collect this amount of money from these students that they are definitely providing these kinds of things from. But we're happy to show it to you. This is how they are going to do it. Definitely means that if someone is going to study for 5 years of campus, it definitely means that they are going to insert some kind of profit onto this kind of amount that they were supposed to originally pay, which they definitely failed to definitely inform us about. Because we are seeing that these kinds of institutions some kind of guarantee and they also need some kind of profit to definitely ensure that the amount of money that they are definitely investing in, or if the government is down which is inserting in money, it needs some kind of profit definitely to continue this kind of program running. So they fail to even show us this kind of thing. So it is very problematic in a way that it is going to bring up a lot of burden to someone who has just really started. Notice the amount of time that someone spends while studying campus. If it is medicine, you're taking 5 years. 5 years of a loan that is definitely multiplying. It means by the time you're even in countries like Uganda, whereby even unemployment is definitely being very, very low, it means that by the time you even get that job and you begin paying that amount of money substantially, as they are even telling us, it means that it is going to become very problematic in a way that it is going to cause a lot of burden to this kind of people. So in the long run, you find yourself that you're paying 3 times the amount of money you would have rather paid just once. So I'm proud to oppose. So one thing we should really understand is how definitely these two kinds of words work. One, we are paying this amount of money, charging fees upfront. It does not necessarily mean that before you enter an institution, you have to directly pay this amount of money. We are seeing universities in Uganda whereby you can pay the amount of money before you even enter the university, which means you have an entire semester of you sitting down and definitely collect this amount of money. It is definitely being very good in this kind of way whereby you're able to understand this. But let me first characterize to you what our entire case is definitely all about. You have to definitely understand what stands on these two kinds of words. So they really neglect the biggest kind of characterization, which is called the problem of unemployment. We are facing with the problem of unemployment in the status quo, whereby it is having two kinds of inflation. Let me first show you how this is going to be, because on a financial level. On a financial level, on their side of the house, they will have a problem whereby this amount of money cannot just be paid to these students and it is not going to come up with some kind of profit. It means that they have to be inserting some kind of profit to it. So this kind of profit is going to multiply, and at a point in time, a student is going to find himself paying 3 times the amount of money they would have originally paid at once. So this means that it is going to become a more financial burden on their side of the house for this person who's going to graduate too. We are seeing it on an educational level. So you have to really understand that this education is definitely very expensive, and we also are opposed to that education is definitely really expensive. We are seeing in countries like in Uganda whereby people are failing to access this kind of education, tertiary education, because of the fact that they are originally lacking money. But at a point in time whereby they definitely make a decision of bringing in this kind of loans and they think that it is going to work, let me show you how this is not going to work. It is not going to work in a way that, first of all, they do not guarantee us that this person is going to get this job, and even once they get this job, they are going to pay. Notice like the current statistics in Uganda, whereby more than 300,000 students are graduating each year and only 90,000 jobs are available, leaving a lot of students who are definitely lacking jobs. So they are not even guaranteeing this kind of employment. And even if they come up with all these other models that are standing in the status quo, like Uganda, whereby they are bringing the new things and everything, they're going to find that a student is being loaded a lot, whereby by the time they begin up this business and they get this amount of loan to start up this business, they have a burden of paying this amount of money that they paid for fees, even 3 times, because it is including in profit, which they fail to indicate. And they also are facing a problem of even paying this money itself that they have used to start up their business. So it shows you that it is entirely problematic on their side of the government. That's why you're saying that it is better we pay this kind of tuition as much as high it is, because we see that we need this kind of utilities in this kind of house instead of facing with some kind of problems in future. So what is the solution? So we are saying that, as we have already clearly told you, how it is going to impact students. So we are saying that on our side of the house, students, yes, they may be very burdened with the amount of money to pay everything, all the requirements and everything. But at a point in time, whereby they know that I'm going to pay, if it is 3 million, all these 3 million, once it is paid, there is no any other extra amount of profit. But on their side of the house, there is going to be some kind of profit that is going to be put onto this amount of money. And this profit is definitely increasing with time. So it means that by the time a student gets his job or gets even a business on his own, he's going to find himself that he's being heavily burdened to definitely do this kind of thing. So two, we're saying this kind of thing on a university level. Universities will definitely have to put in a lot of money whereby they have to at least get something out, because we are seeing that they are being funded by things like government and all these other kinds of things. So it means that at the end of the day, the government has to definitely get guarantee of getting this money back. The guarantee of getting this money back means at the end of the day, whereby some countries like Uganda, whereby unemployment is even very high, it means that there is no guarantee on their side of the case. And even if they come up with all these programs whereby we are trying to create jobs, the student will still find himself being very burdened, because these are very heavy loans. Because you find yourself that you're having a lot of profit, you're paying almost twice the amount of money you would have originally paid. Yes, it means that it's going to deteriorate your entire economy. And
Right.
even if it means you get yourself like a business, it is going to become very hard for you to maintain this business. Three, we are looking on this on a government level. The government is definitely supposed to invest into this amount of money. And on the side of the house, we are seeing that most governments are already trying to at least initiate some kind of money to these people. We are seeing presence of things like scholarships. We are seeing government universities whereby if you have qualified to go to a government university, you're not paying the full amount of money. There is some kind of deductions and all these other kinds of things. But on the other side of the house, as much as they believe that these kinds of things are, they want a student to pay a portion of money they can afford and then the rest later, but they are not even giving us that. Is this government going to put this kind of profit or not? And at the end of the day, this student is going to find themselves burdened, as we have already clearly told you. Then on the parents' level, the parents, yes, they may be burdened paying all this amount of fees and they may be on their side of the house. But what are the future implications that are going to come out of this? It means that the students are going to become very hard to get these kinds of jobs. And even if they get these kind of jobs, or they even start up some kind of business, it is going to fail to grow up, because they will be burdened to pay all this amount of money. So on our side of the house, we definitely get this. So they come up and they tell us of things like quality education, come up and they inform us of things like quality education. They come up and they tell us of more accessibility to education. But quality education is already standing because of the fact that we are seeing these students already paying this amount of money, which means that we are definitely using this amount of money to provide each and everything necessary for a university student to definitely get better grades. And the fact that they are paying this amount of money, the universities are definitely being pressured to make sure that they educate their students very well and very smartly, so that they can be able to get the good products out of them. So on their side of the house, whereby they believe that because the students have already paid the money, these universities will not put in a lot into them. Does not really stand in this kind of debate, because at the end of the day, we are seeing that if you paid this money, it means that this lecturer has to work so hard, because they know you have already paid your money and you have to get results out. So that definitely does not stand. So the second argument of more accessibility to education does not also really stand. How does it really stand? We are saying that governments have already provided at least some kind of significances to this kind of people. We are saying that presence of scholarships for the students who have already passed. And on top of that, we are saying that if you're in a government university, you do not pay the amount of money like someone who's in a private university. So with all these kinds of things definitely standing, we are saying that the government is at least trying to work so hard to these kind of things. So we acknowledge that there is also a financial problem on our side of the house, but it stands more on their side of the house, whereby they are not even seeing the future implementations that will happen in the future. I'll take that POI. I'll take that POI.
Yeah, it's out of order. You agenda data is generally up. You have like 10 seconds.
Okay, so conclusively, in my kind of case, we have to definitely analyze this on a financial and on an educational level. On our side of the house, as much as there is also a financial problem and also on an economic and educational problem, but on their side of the house, these things stand more than even on our side of the house. So we are having our side of the house being safer compared to their side of the house, whereby they are not clearly telling us about these future implementations and even the future kind of things that they will definitely bring out. I therefore stand to rest my case. Thank you.
All right, we thank that speaker. Second prop, you're up.
Jibril, if you're speaking, we really can't hear you. So I don't know what's up.
Maybe you should try reconnecting.
I think it's a recurring problem. Can't Jibril really try another device? I think Jesse, I think you're the captain for this team. Could you please help get a hold of Jibril?
Yeah, let me get him.
Jibril.
Yeah,
Defend his device.
he has logged back in, but he has defended.
Jibril.
Jibril, we still can't hear you if you're trying to speak.
I think Jibril needs to really get another Discord app, but that's gonna take a lot of time. So I think we're of the view that he may not be efficient for this round. I think Jesse, if you don't mind ironing this round, that's okay. If you and Raima don't mind ironing the round.
I don't mind earning. I just want to make sure he's completely off before I start.
Because even if he's on, we can't hear him speak. So it's not doing much of a help.
Okay, so at 5:42, if we still can't hear him, then Jesse, you have to iron.
Okay, it's okay.
Okay, Jesse, you have to go.
Okay, let me just take 30 seconds and reorganize my notes because now I have to. Am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, let me set my timer. Okay, I'm going to begin my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. In an era of global inclusivity, Probe brought forth a model that will ensure universities adapt to the ever-evolving needs of society. In our world, what we envision is an education where everyone, regardless of income, background, or status, can get society's bare minimum to be called a successful man. Education, university education. I think why OP loses this debate is because they clearly do not understand Raima's characterization and how important it is. I'll get first in rebuttal, then I'll go into substantive arguments. I think the first thing they talked about is about how there's high levels of unemployment and what guarantee we can have about repayment mode. Basically, they are questioning whether these people will actually pay back. I think in Raima's characterization, it's quite clear. This debate is about you paying loans on your income, which means this debate does not entail anything concerning with unemployment. It's not about unemployment, and this shouldn't be our topic that comes out in this debate. Why is this true? Because at a point in time when we are charging you loans, or when you're paying back loans, it assumes that you have now received a sustainable source of income, and two, it is your own choice on how much you want to pay back. I think why OP doesn't understand is because they're thinking that we are coercing them into paying back a loan. By the time a student takes a loan, with the party or the Ministry of Education that on the payment of $50,000 that I'm supposed to give back, I have agreed that for 50 years, I'm going to be paying exactly $1,000 per year, something with my income I can understand and I can manage to sustain. That eliminates all other things about how they're coerced or how they will not be willing or how to be a financial strain. Because all these things are done with two things. One, when you are willing and when you have made that agreement in person. But secondly, when you have access to a job and a sustainable source of income. The second thing that they talked about is how like profits are there and how you're going to be paying 3 times as much. Chair, I want you to understand this thing. The price of paying for education or the price for being educated is not cheap. That one we can all acknowledge. What our side does is that we're giving an avenue to those people who cannot access. Opposition's model was very lousy, if I'm to be honest, because they're trying to say payment upfront and how people are not going to be paying 3 times as much. The whole essence of proposition's case is basing on people who cannot pay for education upfront. We are not refusing people who can pay the $60,000 upfront to pay it. We are now putting in these elements for people who are not able to pay, which means their whole idea of what you can still pay even before the education deadline comes, before exam comes, it cannot work because the motion assumes, or the debate is in a context that we're dealing with people who cannot access paying for education because of different circumstances, such as their parents being poor or because they're in a cycle of generational poverty. The only way out for these specific people is for them to pay when they have now access to job opportunities, because in current status quo, they cannot access. I think that's what opposition is not understanding. The second thing that they talked about, the third thing, sorry, is about how scholarships are there. I do consider scholarships are there, government scholarships are there. I think Raima already talked about these things in 2 ways. One, few people get it, and the number of people who access scholarships is reducing. The ministry from last year said in the 2026 cycle, they are only going to be giving scholarships to specific categories, people in the STEM category and people in law. That means year by year, the number of people who are getting access to government scholarships is significantly reducing. But even though you were to ignore that analysis, why we still win on this particular thing is because we show you that only the rich people can get access to these things, or mainly the rich people. Why? Because these scholarships are not contingent on need-based aid, they're contingent on academic performance. Why this is still favoring the rich people is because these rich people are the ones who get access to materials to pass exams and access to good schools. That's why out of the people who get government scholarships, you find 26 are from Chitende, 19 are from SMARC, 18 are from Namagunga, all those big schools, and you find very few are from people like from Kotindo, whatever. That means that these things still do not favor the most important stakeholders, which we're trying to front in this debate. Going to positive matter, because I think opposition's case is finished. I think Raima brought up the second argument about increased accessibility to higher education. I just have 2 layers of analysis to add on to this because I don't think she finished it very well. I think she talked about the threshold for accessing education, how it's high. That is to say, in primary and secondary education, first of all, one, the school fees are lower, like 900K, but secondly, there are avenues for people who cannot pay, such as UP and USE. In comparison, university education, which is the threshold for determining whether someone is successful and can easily access the job market, there are very limited structures for these kind of things, because the only structures is that you have to pay upfront or you do not access education. That is why you find people in Makerere University on the last day, on the last examination, they are barred from sitting examinations because they do not entail or they do not meet the criteria of payment on school fees. That means on our side, on their side, 2 things happen. One, generational poverty continues because, one, most of the times these people who are poor come from poor families. What this means is that they're not going to be able to access education, and in turn it means that in the long run this whole issue of generational poverty comes about. But in the second instance, there's this classist structure which is brought about. What this means is that in a scenario where we take Ops world, only a few select people access education, which means you create a classy structure and not a diverse body. Why is it important to create a diverse body? One, you increase everyone's access to ability to get employment opportunities. Secondly, you increase the ability for a country's GDP to emerge because there are many accesses to employment opportunities. But thirdly, you increase the general accessibility of the whole world or the whole country towards accessing a sustainable amount of education. That is important because it shows you, one, that a country will generally develop better and faster because everyone has access to education. But secondly, the quality of education increases because you now have access to this. On the issue of quality education, I really saw very little engagement from UP, and I really think this whole issue of quality education still stands because we show you that, one, you directly tie universities' income or profits to the success of their graduates. You inherently make them work harder to ensure all their students and all their graduates become better, or they become successful and they become employable, because the money you earn is directly contingent on how much or how successful your students are. I'll go on to my extension. Our extension is about studying with no pressure. We need to look at status quo in this issue. I think in status quo, what happens is that many people do not study when they are in complete control, or they study with pressure. Two reasons. One, because they study when they are not yet sure of whether they have money to pay for education, because normally universities, like, let's say, either they tell them you are not going to study unless you pay, or at best you're going to only sit an exam if you're paid full tuition. That means that a student studies when they have fear or when they have pressure. On our world, what happens is that students study when they do not have pressure of paying, because they know when they're going to pay back, they're going to pay back when they have the ability to pay, because their income is going to be charged as they so wish with a certain percentage. Why this is better on our side is because, one, you ensure that students study with no pressure, which means that academic performance is generally better. And that's why I tell you that quality of education goes up on our side vis-a-vis Ops World. But secondly, on our side, why it is better is because people now enhance their innovativeness and innovation, because, one, they study to work hard in order to get better jobs, such that they can easily pay back this loan without any burden. But secondly, they work harder in class with no pressure to pass exams, because they know that their afterlife or their life after university is contingent on how much money they make, such that they do not have that strain paying back. I think my speech has done two things. One, it has totally nullified this whole thing of strain and burden, which is brought out upside. I really don't expect it. I think they need to bring better substantive. But secondly, it also clears out any lingering doubt which people have about whether there's access to scholarships, because we proved to you that these scholarships are inefficient and there's a need and a mechanism to enhance poor students. OP needs to show us why poor students are enhanced on their side and how poor students can get access to this better education. Proud to propose.
We thank that speaker. Second up.
Confirming audibility.
Yes, you're audible.
All right. I'll take my pure eyes in the text space, and that will be preferably after the 50th minute. And I start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel. So realize that the case that we get from team proposition is mainly fronting two arguments. One, the increased access to quality education, and two, the quality education that they're increasing accessibility to. So what I'm going to do in my first very minutes, I'm going to first rebut the quality education and show how it is not achieved on their side of the house, and then show how it then cancels out their second argument. So they are assuming that they are going to want to have this quality education from a university that is not one getting like payment from these students at the same point of time, right? So realize that we're having this argument in a kind of country like Uganda, where the university is like completely at some point independent of government. Yeah, it is facilitating its lecturers, it is facilitating all its activities from the tuition it is getting from these students. So a case in point where they then cancel out this tuition and be like, you can pay it up like after you have educated, it then means two things. One, the fact that they are not even these students are paying at their own pace, it means that the university cannot have good records, it cannot have good books of when they are receiving what amount of payment and how they are investing it. And secondly, they do not then show us how this university is then expected to educate these students well and give them the quality education without having a particular source of funds that is sustainable and accurate. So then that means that the quality education that they are achieving
they're arguing for on their side of the house does not actually exist. And since then the quality education does not exist, it means that the increased access to the quality education that does not exist, those both arguments are cancelled out. Going further, so now they give us, we show them, my first speaker comes forward and shows you the issue of the burden on the stakeholders, right? So, and then they come and show us how they rebut it, and then I would like to do an extension on that. To begin with, how does burden on stakeholders mean? It means that now, when you look at status quo as it is in the first place, we have things like scholarships, which then gives the burden on government. I'm going to go back the scholarships issue later. Secondly, there is the issue of the parents and on how they are like the ones taking forward the charge of educating their students. But then a case in point where they now shift the burden from these particular stakeholders of the government and the parents and then put it directly to the children. It means two things. One, it means that this student is going to have to study, as Prosper showed in his first piece, is going to have to study when they know that, okay, after I have studied, I have to like work for a particular point of time and pay back. Again, I quote, Raima says they are borrowing this and making it look like the way loans are. But then how do loans look like in this kind of debate, right? They look like, as Prosper told you, loans have something like profit part of it. They have something like interest. So then that means that the burden on stakeholders is going to come in two ways. One, the fact that it is going to be more expensive, as Prosper told you, because of the loans and their nature and how they look like they're going to have the interest part of it. So a case in point where you are then now have to be forced to pay a bigger amount of money, we feel like then that is going to be a more burden. Again, I show you the nature of these stakeholders of the students and what they look like. So you realize that after campus, you have like literally started earning a living, right? Like that is if at all you even earn it. You have started earning a living, and then you are like trying to make a footing in this kind of world where you are like trying to make a future. But then a case in point where before you even earn a particular kind of living, where you even earn a particular kind of income, you already have a particular kind of loan that you're supposed to pay. We then feel like it is more of a burden. Again, I come and show you on the level of unemployment that there is no guarantee that immediately you finish university, no matter what quality education you get in, even if you are to get it, no matter what quality education that you get, as we look at status quo, we have a high number of people that are unemployed. So this means that their case is very unsustainable because one, the people that they're expecting to get the money from, it is not automatic that they're going to get the whatever the employment. We realize that a kind of world that we are living in, no matter the education that you get, the chances of unemployment, because we've seen people graduate from good universities like Makerere where they offer quality education, but then the fact that they are still very many unemployment levels, it means that this is not sustainable because then they are not assured of getting these funds that they're getting. Secondly, I'm going to come and show you in my speech why we necessarily think that we have to support status quo for what it is. I'm going to mainly show you four things. One, the fact that status quo is not really much of a failure as they try to point out, and I'm going to do this through the scholarships. So they come and try to paint a picture that, oh wait, realize that the kind of scholarships that are there are only available to a particular group of people. We agree to that, but then also show you that these poor people also have access to these scholarships, because in the scholarships of government like in Uganda, there is that particular aspect of the hard to reach districts, right? So people from all those areas that are not necessarily in the best schools, that are not necessarily in SMAC and all those schools, they also have an opportunity to these scholarships. But then why do we then feel like having these scholarships is a better stand than what they are showing? On mainly one thing. One, we even a scholarship, you are literally like being given trust and information. Rejected. It is going to be like giving you a more kind of incentive to want to study, to want to become better and all that. So now, panel, we realize that on our side of the house, we agree that there are problems existing in status quo. But then also in status quo, we show you that there are like very many solutions that are being put forward, right? Like, okay, you can see on their side of the house, they're trying to make it look like, oh wait, when you're going to enter school, you have to pay all the $5,000 at once. But then we realize that in most universities, actually, if not most, in all universities in status quo, there is no university where you have to pay like the whole of it at once, right? They are like installments, and they're like those other measures that are in place to make sure that you pay it when you can like actually afford it. So now, if we have to look at it like on the even if analysis, and then we assume that they are going to achieve the quality education and the increased accessibility to education and all that, we show you why necessarily that is not going to work on mainly two things. One, the high levels of unemployment in status quo clearly show that they are not guaranteed that these people are going to get the money that they expect to pay back. And the fact that this money is not then going back to the universities, we then see that these people are not then getting the education that they attain for. POI taken. 3, 2, 1. Going further. Okay. So now you realize that I think on their side.
I think just to give POI. Okay.
All right.
So okay, let Jesse give it.
Okay, we do concede that university education is hefty and profits are there. Do you think the cost of education is worth the job that you're going to get after? And do you think it's a necessary sacrifice?
Okay, let me get back to that after I finish this. So I was again showing you why their side of the house then brings about more problems. The fact that it is going to then burden this kind of particular youth that has not yet even like set a footing in this kind of status quo, we then feel like on their side of the house, the fact that this person is then going to be more strained, we feel like on their side of the house, it is actually worse. Now, again, about the POI, they asked about whether the worth of education and all that stuff. We agree that yes, the worth of it is very worth it. And then I like kind and show you one thing that they come and ask us to do in our speech about how the poor people are going to like access education. Yeah, so they come and try to paint a picture that the only success that you can get in this kind of world is through education. But then we have seen very many people that have succeeded through other measures that are not education. We agree that we cannot that is actually equal, something that is actually obvious. So a case in point where we are having measures in status quo that are trying to educate everybody that can actually learn, then we feel like then it is not yet at that point where we take such a drastic measure as like taxing this. It is like charging after they study. And again, now when you look at it like in this kind of way, we look at even the people are not in status quo, because Prosper comes and tells you in his first speech that there are issues in status quo, something like a yoga thing, looking at empowering everybody in order. Again, if we are again continue, I also show you on the issue of scholarships that there is also a provision of where they necessarily even include the people that are not able to get education, not necessarily only the people that are not necessarily the people that are having a better grades and all that. So with all that said, I would like to then continue and show you the impact of their kind of stance on this kind of status quo. So we realize that now when you tax this kind of person, like the fact that you are letting them pay at their own kind of convenience is one thing. It means that they can either choose to pay or not pay. How does then that come about? It means that you are not like putting them under any kind of specific pressure to then do like as you say, right? And then we also look at the nature of the people that we are actually dealing with. These are actually people that have just finished campus and are probably still trying to survive. So unless they can come forward in their third speech and show us that they are going to assure that these people get the employment to get the money from, then we realize that, oh, time's up. I rest my case.
All right, we thank that speaker. Third prop.
Hi, audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, let me set my notes. Okay, I'm going to begin my speech. I'm sorry that I didn't prepare for 2 speeches in the debate, but I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. So I think why already loses this debate is because they're not comparative. I think this debate needed a comparison between what our world looks like and what their world looks like. For them to have taken out the harms or the problems to our side, they needed to show a bit of exclusivity as to why those things are not good in the current status quo. I think why Prop already wins is because we show you that the problems which are there on off-world are only exclusive to their world, and why those things do not come to our world when we impose this kind of form. I think I'm going to go into a bit of rebuttal. The first thing they talked about is the still lingering thing about the whole issue of like scholarships. I don't even have to engage much in this because I already showed to you that even though these things are there, the only extra analysis we get from highs, the whole thing of their village, whatever thing. In status quo, government only provides a set amount of scholarships, and those scholarships are going down. Even though you bring all those kind of funny things of like the rural things or district quotas, those still do not account for everyone who wants to access university education but cannot. I'll give you an example. though you were to say that there are district quotas, let's say from Mukono, and that helps them, still the people who come from Namagunga and Smak who stay in Mukono still take up a majority of those things, which means the bare minimum, like 20, 30 slots are given to these poor people who have not got the best academic performance. That still means that this kind of poor people inaccessibility to education is still only exclusive to their side. And we show you why those things are solved on our side when people are given access to education and are allowed to pay later. The second lingering issue is the whole issue of unemployment. And I tell you, I do consider unemployment still exists on our side. There's no person who is ever going to tell you that there's going to be a perfect world where unemployment is not there. That's a fallacy and a lie. What we show to you is that university is the best access towards solving the unemployment issue. That is to say, as Raima says in her characterization, the world right now only rotates on people who have gone through university education, and those are usually the only people who are employed. When you now allow people to pass through education, or more people to pass through education, you now get a huge step towards solving that issue of unemployment vis-a-vis their world. This is now where the comparison is. When you do not allow these people, or when you now base it contingent on upfront payment, it means you're reducing the people who access education. And that means the number of people who stay unemployed is significantly larger on their side than on our side. So the issue of accessibility to education and the reduction of unemployment, it's a clear prop win. The second thing they talked about is how students will work knowing they have to pay. I think that's better. I think in a comparison, it's better for me to work when I know I have to pay, to study when I know I have to pay later, than to study when I know that my sitting of exams is contingent on if I pay 200,000 on the day before the paper. Again, I think I already showed it in my speech. The last thing I showed in my speech is that OP has to show how they cater for people who afford this kind of education. OP is trying to run away from their burden because OP keeps saying this whole thing of what you pay in installments, you pay when it's time for the paper. This motion, as I've already said, assumes that this person cannot afford education because they live in generational poverty. Their parents are unable to afford, and they themselves, at the time when they're studying, are unable to access money to pay for this education. What these guys now needed to show, and it's why they have failed this debate, is because they do not access, or they do not allow accessibility for those people who cannot pay for this kind of education. What that means is the two things that are not engaged. One, creating overclass society who access education, only a minority few. But secondly, how you do not create a diverse society, or you create a society where few people are able to access education, so you keep that lingering unemployment. On that issue of accessibility, that clash, it is a clear prop win. The last thing they talked about is how universities are like independent of government. I think this is just a lie. I think it's not true. And I don't think that Shia should buy this thing. I think all education institutions receive a certain portion from government, whether it's a government institution or a private institution. That is why in COVID time, when private institutions were suffering, government bailed them out. But even though you were to ignore that analysis, I think it's still not true. One, government usually helps in terms of different like scholarships and different loans. But secondly, they are always private donations. That's why people in US or the UK, they're what they call private scholarships or private sponsorships. This looks like people who are paying for students' tuition directly to the university to pay for people of their choice to study, which means there are still many avenues for universities to obtain income or to obtain salaries or to obtain money for them to continue running. But even though universities still generally have reserves, because these are universities that have existed for centuries, decades. These are universities which have existed for long, and they still have access to vast majority of funds because they have very many alumni who can now fund for this kind of education. But lastly, still to engage in, we still show to you that this is an incentive to make sure that people, their graduates, work harder to graduate and be employed. Why this is true is because in vast
POI.
I'm going to take you. This is still true because in the vast majority of instances, it is contingent on how successful graduates are. That means on the issue of quality education, prop wins for two reasons. One, we showed you that
university education or the quality of education increases, because universities directly know that the only money, not the only money, but the a huge amount of money they are going to get is whether their graduates are good, employable, and get employed, which means that internships, and this is why unemployment is now solved on our side, which means the whole issue of internships, which comes up in Raima's speech, is better on our side. Why? Because universities make an effort to get these people internships because they want to get this money from their incomes when they have been employed. But still, why we win this motion is because of just general technicalities. I think on the issue of what is best in terms of stakeholder, what is best for students, I think what these guys try to run is the whole issue of the financial strain that students have, like left, right, center, when they have to pay loans. I think in characterization, it's already clear. One, Raima already shows you that it's only going to be contingent on when someone gets money or when someone gets a job. But secondly, it's when someone decides how much they want to pay. I don't think it should come up in that op speech, because we already showed you that the student, him or herself, already chooses the payment or the method of payment he or she wants to pay back. I'll take your PI. I have 15 seconds. Take you.
Okay, so my question is, where will the universities in your kind of the world get the money to give you that quality education, yet these students are not even paying, and yet it is not a loan as you're saying?
No. I just gave you 4 mechanisms that show to you that I don't know. I just showed you how they already are still sponsored by government in the vast majority of instances, and how that's a lie on your side. I've shown you how they're usually private donations through people who are providing scholarships. I've shown you how they're alumnus. I've shown you how they have reserves, and I've shown you how they are still going to incentivize people to work hard. I don't know if you are listening. Why we win this debate is on 2 grounds. One, on the issue of accessibility, we show you one, it is inherently important for everyone to access education. Our side solves that. A, solves the class structure and ensures everyone, even those who are poor, access education. 2, we ensure to you that everyone has that ability to now pay at a later stage, because this thing is contingent. When you get a job, that's when you're going to pay. But secondly, on the class of education, why we win is because we showed you 2 things. One, how universities are incentivized to work harder, but in second instances, how it's an incentive for students, they themselves, to work harder because they have to pay back the debt. I think it's a clear prop win, because we showed you those 2 clashes and how OP does not engage in the key matter of the debate, the general stakeholders, the poor people proud to voice.
All right. We thank that speaker. Hope you're up for your last substantive speech. Stephen, if you're speaking, I'm not able to hear you. I don't know if it's only a problem this side, but I can't get you clearly.
No, it's really a general problem. If you can reconnect.
Prosper or Shanis, please get back to Steve and see whether you can be able to join.
Okay, allow me to leave the call for a moment and see if I can contact Steve like offline.
All right then. Prosper, Shanis, any feedback? Just have like 1 or 2 minutes, and one of you have to iron. I can see Stephen in the call, but I still can't hear anything.
Yeah, he said that he's fixing his Discord. Let's wait a bit. If he fails, then one of us can iron.
All right.
Sorry about that, but it seems like Stephen is not going to make it. His Discord, I think, has issues. So I'm going to do third. Allow me, give me like 1 minute to reorganize my content and start.
Okay.
Confirming audibility.
Yes, you're loud and clear.
All right. My time starts in 3, 2, 1. Panel. What we mainly get from third proposition speech is them trying to show that we lose this debate because of majorly we do not compare. But then I'm going to do that in my third speech and then show you why they necessarily lose this round. So to begin with, I'm going to begin with the likelihood of either cases happening. Yeah. So if you look at proposition case, what it basically looks like, it looks like one on like making these students, the particular students, pay their school fees due after they have graduated. Yeah. And then they assume that this is going to be much better and this is going to be more feasible than a world that we are having right now, because the world we're having right now, where we charge tuition for the students when they are upfront. Again, so I'm not going to go and show you basically why our world is likely to happen, because it is already happening in status quo, and we agree that it is happening in status quo. But then I'm going to go forward and show you why their world is not likely to actually happen, and why they're not likely to even achieve anything that they are arguing for. So to begin with, I first come and show you in my second speech, I come and show you that, oh wait, here they are assuming that they're going to get this kind of money from these particular students that have just finished school and are going to pay at their own case whatsoever, get basing from the characterization we get from Raima and the second speech we get from Jesse. But then I come forward and show you that, wait, this is not actually feasible in the actual, because of mainly one thing, not the unemployment levels. I come forward and show you that, check, there is like very many people are graduating from all the best universities, but they are not automatically getting the jobs. What does then that mean? It means that all they are applying, of getting people internship, of getting people all that stuff that Jesse comes and tells us in his third speech, we see that these are things that have actually been in status quo. And because they have like actually been in status quo, it means that there is no guarantee that these people are not going to get, and they are not going to get the jobs to pay back the universities for the education and all that stuff. Then what does this actually mean? It means two things. One, it means that these universities are not going to offer the quality education that they are trying to achieve on their side of the house, because of the fact that they cannot run on a scenario where they're not having money. And then how they actually come and rebut this is actually absurd. They come and show us that government and that the schools are not actually independent, that they are getting money from government and all that stuff. But then we come forward and show you that, okay, wait, the fact that they're even getting money from governments and international and whatever organizations, if this was really the fact that they could support themselves on this kind of money, then we would not have these overwhelming school fees, overwhelming tuition in university schools. But the fact that they are still pressing the students, they are still pressing these particular families to pay these overwhelming school fees, it then necessarily means one thing: the fact that these universities cannot actually survive on these outside incomes. But then the fact that we come and show you in my second speech that they are likely not to get the amount of money that is expected in the expected time to run these universities as expected, to give them the quality education, then it cancels out a couple of their arguments, right? Again, going on the likelihood of what is going to happen. And now comparing on their side of the house and our side of the house, we look at the problems that are going to be bring about. So in status quo, we realize that we agree that there are problems in status quo, and we agree that in status quo there are very many things that are being put forward to solve the problems in status quo. We come on very many levels of analysis and show you how scholarships are working, and how they are actually like trying to cater for everybody. They come and show us the issue of scholarships are going to are reducing and all that stuff, but then we then think that is not really relevant in this kind of debate. Then I come and show you that the fact that it is not really as pressing as their kind of issue, where these people are paying in installments, where they can actually can actually afford. On their side of the house, they come forward and show us they agree that this is going to be kind of something like a loan. And we come and show you how problematic a loan is. The fact that it is going to be increased and the amount of money is going to be much worse. That they are not going to even have the guarantee that this money is going to be returned by the previous students. We also see the likelihood of their policy failing after a couple of years, probably. And then again, going further, I come and show you that you see second level of analysis, it is problematic because of the burden that is going to that is going to be brought on these people, right? We come and show you on very many levels that their side of the house is actually more expensive than our side of the house. If they are agreeing that, wait, you look at status quo, people do not have money, people do not have all this. And again, I show you that there is no likelihood of these people getting that much amount of money, no matter what kind of time frame you give them in the after they graduate. So a case in point, where we then see that it is going to be more problematic on their side of the house, it is going to be more expensive. And the fact that it shifts the burden from the government that is trying to give scholarships, that is trying to send people abroad on scholarships, from the parents that are working tooth and nail to support these particular students, and then shifting all the burden to this particular student, it then means one thing. It means that the likelihood of this actually not working as they try to paint it are very high. Again, going further, they come and then show that the main issues with our status quo are the problems that are existing. The fact that the poor are not getting education. But then, I come and show you that the fact that there are scholarships that are even there for those people that are not necessarily in the best schools, it then means that they're even trying to cater for the poor. second level, I come and show you that then it then means that there are even these other people that are actually quite successful in society, not because they got university education, but because they undertook other measures that have been put in government, measures like yoga, measures like other things of businesses and all that stuff, measures like taking loans to put up actually means of survival. But then they come and show us that, you see, this is not credible in this kind of debate. Then what does then that mean? It means that a case in point, where we show you that we actually try to cater for the people, for the poor people in status quo. We also come and show you that status quo is already trying as much as it can to solve the problems that they are actually facing. Then we then think that we win this debate on those grounds. Again, majorly on their arguments, I come and show you in my second speech why quality education does not exist, because they do not show us how they are expecting to get quality education from a particular government, from a particular university that is not necessarily in the best kind of financial state to educate these students. Again, this increased access to quality education. So the fact that there is no quality education on their side of the house whatsoever, we then feel like the increased access to whatever education they're trying to paint does not necessarily exist. Again, now, going further, now let me go on the major comparative. I'm going to now compare how the stakeholders are going to be affected on our side of the house and the stakeholders on their side of the house. We have seen that in status quo, people are actually, yeah, we agree that the school fees in status quo are like overwhelming, but people have like found a way to go about them, yeah? We do not necessarily even go to university. There are people that are branching midway and then achieving success in a much better way. Like people can branch off at senior 4 level and then go pursue their particular courses that they are doing, and then they actually come back to university in the long run when they can actually like afford it. But then they overlook this and try to show us that status quo is at that level, that it is so bad that we then have to remove everything that is actually happening right now and then put a place in scenario where this person has to study with the burden of knowing that they have to pay their school fees in future. So now they come and then bring about a major issue of how we then have more burden on our side of the house. But realize that, as I've showed you, there are very many other stakeholders in status quo that are actually taking on the role of like the school fees. Yeah, you realize that there are parents in this kind of thing where they be like, we agree that there are parents in this kind of status quo where they are all like, now you see, you can go ahead and study. Me, I will try tooth and nail to cover your school fees. And then we realize that even in status quo, there are like kind of students that are working also to kind of like pay their school fees in the due time. But then we show you that that is much better than a world where you have to pay after, because one, the fact that you're trying to set for yourself a living, but then you're trying to also pay the loan that is back. You are overwhelmed with things like rent. You're overwhelmed with things like maintaining yourself in a particular kind of way. And the fact that they do not even show us they do not actually show us the possibility and the guarantee that these people are going to get the employment that they assume on their side of the house, the employment that is in the long run supposed to come forward and show us and give us this amount of money back to the university to keep them functioning. We then feel like their side of the house cannot win. Now, to finalize my speech, I come and show you that they do not win on mainly 3 things. One, the fact that the quality education that they are trying to achieve on their side of the house does not exist in the real kind of
Time.
right. I beg to submit.
All right. We thank you for that speech, and I'd like to call upon the reply speaker in opposition.
Okay, I would like to confirm audibility. Am I audible? Can anyone hear me, please?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Okay. So I will begin my reply speech in 3, 2, 1. Now, panel, notice one thing that the proposition part of the government fails to point out is the fact that how they are going to get this amount of money. They clearly come up and they tell us of needs for university things, how expensive it is, and all those other kinds of things, which we also acknowledge on our side of the government. We do really understand that, yes, education is very expensive, especially tertiary type of education, and we do really understand that all the requirements that are definitely really being provided at campus are definitely really needed. So at a point in time whereby they believe that these students are not supposed to be paying this amount of money, instead they should pay the amount of money they can afford, then they will pay the rest later, makes it really look a little bit more glamorized. So they fail to come up and they show us a model on how they are going to get this amount of money, especially at a point in time whereby we told you that there is very high levels of unemployment. We clearly came up in our first speech and we informed you of things like the fact that in a country like Uganda, where more than 300,000 students graduate each year when there are only 90,000 jobs, this clearly shows you that there is a very high level of unemployment, and this means that the guarantee of even these people paying this amount of money back is even very low. So at a point in time whereby we are not even guaranteed that this money is going to be paid back, necessarily means that this entire program is going to fall because of lack of funds. And they should really clearly come up in their reply session. They tell us how they are even going to get this amount of money. They come up and they tell us that they are having funds from government and all these other kinds of things, but they should really understand that this never really makes it entirely look like a loan. If it never really looks like a loan, it means that this is never really put on some kind of profit. So the profit is never really multiplying with time. So it means that if I'm to study for 5 years, and I also spend like 2 years looking for a job, it means that all this profit will keep on fighting. So at a point in time whereby I graduate to be able to go out there and begin to pay this amount of money, it means I will find myself having to pay 3 times the amount of money I would have paid when I was paying input. So they clearly came up and they told us that they think on our side of the house, we are definitely going to make these people pay money before they even enter the institution. But we clearly came up and we told you that our model is already standing in status quo whereby people are paying amount of this money even during their campus time before you do your exams. So it means that if your semester is for 4 months, you are able to look for that fees slowly by slowly up to when your final paper is going to be set, which is going to be like even after 4 months. So that shows you that as much as we acknowledge that we're having problems in our kind of resolution, whereby some of the poor people may not be able to get their kind of fees and all these other kinds of things, but we're saying that we are trying to solve this kind of thing in our status quo, whereby we are things like scholarships, whereby we are providing things like all these other kinds of donations. As well as they may not reach to each and everyone, but at least it's definitely really putting up some kind of analysis onto these kind of things. They come up and they clearly think that we are trying to put all the burdens on their side of the house and neglecting anything that is standing on a kind of a case. But one thing they do not really come and tell us is the long-term impact of their whole entire kind of case. It may look like a solution today, but are they really realizing the long-term impact of it to go years and years and years to come? So they should really first come and they inform us of how best this kind of model of theirs they think is going to definitely really work out. So as much as they're thinking that they're going to provide with us quality education, but firstly, we should first understand that this quality education is being funded by some amount of money that is going to be injected. So they should first come up and they tell us where they're going to get this money to inject it, yet even at a point in time whereby the students who they are going to give this kind of program, they are not even they don't even have guarantee of getting jobs. So even if they come up and they inform us of like other things, as we are clearly telling you that things like starting up businesses and all these other kinds of things, whereby we are providing all these kinds of things in status quo, we are saying that this child is going to be provided with two kinds of burdens. One, a burden of paying this kind of fees that is therefore really hectic because of the fact that they have spent a lot of time trying to put it up together. So it means that they will find themselves paying thrice the amount of money to even add in the kinds of profits. Two, they find themselves having a burden of paying this amount of loan that they got to really even start up this kind of business. So they will find that in the long run, their businesses will not even stand for a long period of time because of the fact that they will even fail to get this amount of money. So it clearly showed you the impact on the impact analysis on the kind of the people. So we show you that students will not benefit in a way that they will be heavily hectic because of the fact that they are paying even more than the amount of money they were supposed to pay initially. As much as it may look glamorized in the first place, but if you look at it at a longer perspective and at a more times and years to come, it looks very burdened. So it shows you that these students will be heavily burdened by the time they get jobs. They find themselves paying 3 times the amount of money. So they find themselves that their salaries are definitely being hectic. So students, they come up in their speech and they show us that a child would be able to make a decision of how to pay this amount of money. But even if you're making this amount of money, how you're going to pay it, there's what we call compound interest. Compound interest, whereby this money will keep on piling over the years. So we also show you that parents will not benefit in a way that their children will be heavily burdened to pay all these amounts of loans. So it means that in the time whereby they graduate and they're expected to begin helping their parents financially, they'll fail to get this amount of money because of the fact that they are trying to put this kind of program that will take them a very long period of time. We show you that even the government and even the universities themselves will not benefit because of the fact that they do not have the guarantee that these students are going to pay this money at the end of the day because there is high levels of unemployment. And even if they come up with models of starting up businesses, they'll find that these students are being heavily burdened because at a point in time whereby you have to pay all these two kinds of different things, you have to even eat, drink, and do all these other utilities, it's going to become very hard. So on our side of the government, we do really acknowledge that fees is very expensive and there are people out there who cannot really afford this kind of fees, and this is why people are not going for tertiary institution. But like in our second speech, we clearly showed you that this is not the only way for you to get to attain success. We show you that some people are definitely going for that they're able to get things. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. I would like to call upon the last speaker, reply speech from Prop, 4 minutes.
Hey, can you hear Jibril? Or
Mm,
you can't
no,
hear?
we can't hear Jibril.
Okay. Jibril, can you first unmute yourself when you try speaking? Okay, since his microphone is not working, I think I'll do the reply. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Side proposition doesn't understand our model. We tell you that instead of universities pushing people to pay money before starting, you pay a certain amount that you can handle and the rest is kept for a loan. That is basically what we say. We tell you that on our side of the house, you pay in installments after your graduation. That is to say, you do not pay the whole sum of money at the same time, but you pay according to your capability. This then means that we do not strip you of your money after graduation, but you only give us some of it. But also, secondly, we don't strip you of all your money. We just make you pay a certain amount of money that is then going to be put back within our institution. That is basically what we tell you from our side. This directly engages their whole model of how loans work and whatnot, because even when loans exist in status quo, we tell you that there's a difference between student loans and normal financial loans. And the basic difference is what we run within our side of the house. So 3 things that we get from side proposition in this debate. Firstly, we get an idea to do with their side of the house and how we do not have sustainable funds to sustain these different universities. We give you 3 particular responses. Firstly, we tell you that societies have structures that already help out universities within status quo. That is to say, universities get money from different donors. University can get monies from different governments. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, they still got money from these governments. This is something that is not engaged from their side of the house. At that point, we take this debate. Secondly, we tell you that even when not everyone is actually going to give back these universities the money that they invested within these particular individuals, we tell you that 60% or 70% of these individuals are then going to give up this money. This essentially means that at this instance, these universities still get the income that they're going to use to develop themselves. Thirdly, we tell you that the nature of these student loans then inherently engages the whole idea of how we do not get income, because look at these governments. These are universities and structures that have been existing for a very long time. This essentially means that these universities have already reserves. They have different models that then help them to actually get that sustainable income. But even if it wasn't in those direct instances, we still tell you that they have alumni who actually want to develop these different schools to help them. At that instance, they cannot take that argument. Secondly, we get an argument to do with unemployment in society and not how everyone will get jobs. Firstly, we tell you that university is the best access to get a job, and that is basically to the need of a bachelor's degree to get most of the jobs. And as said, of the house increases these chances due to the increased accessibility of education to different students across the globe, even the poor students. Secondly, we tell you that the money that you then get from these universities still get a certain income at the end of the day due to the money they charge from individuals who pass through their structures. That argument cannot stand. But also, finally, something to do with scholarships. We tell you that firstly, scholarships reduce every year. Look at the governments that try to only give scholarships to students. But also, secondly, the people who are richer have more access to these scholarships because they have the resources to train themselves and be smart. This then makes the poor people not access these different scholarships. This essentially means that even when scholarships, so they can't claim them because the scholarships are only given to the rich people but never given to the poor people. Now, this is basically our case. On our case, we tell you that we do 3 particular things. Firstly, we increase the quality of education for different students within status quo. This is through like the whole incentive for these universities to provide a good education for these students in order to give them that sort of internship and give them that background in order for these students to get that jobs to pay them back. But also, secondly, we tell you that there's increased accessibility to higher education, which is vital for the poor students to end the poor generation cast within the vast majority of instances. But also, finally, we tell you that on our side of the house, we have increased focus on education. And this is something that is important because students can now study without the burden of knowing that they are not going to be able to finish their studies because they don't have the money to finish their studies. I rest my case by telling you that we take this debate because we show you that on our side of the house, we provide the accessibility and the root cause is solved of how students don't go to school. I respect it.
All right, thank you so much. So you're just going to give us a few minutes to deliberate, and then we shall just come back with the OA. Just stay on the call.
Okay, so I think we're gonna harmonize our feedback. So I think we can move to the room just. I think we can just move to the room below. I think that's my room. Okay, yeah, my room. Then by Henry. Room. Then we can sort that from there.
I officially open this debate and invite Donatus Bishop Sidonius to speak first.
Illustrious Judge, today I speak before you, gentlemen, ladies, and our God. I could talk about religion, sin, betraying the scriptures, or the fractured history with our Catholic brothers. But today I want to speak of only one man, a priest, who's been the greatest sinner of us all. Bishop Augustine.
It's time we pull back the veils that have hidden the truth of your beloved bishop.
A man who was driven to represent murderers and individuals with the most base morals. He was a slave to an ambition that pushed him to seek success through the skill of his rhetoric. A man of God, consumed by lust, avarice, and ego. A narcissism that drove him to worship no greater God than himself. This debate was to be about truth. But that truth has been eclipsed by one man. There is no greater sinner than Augustine. The fact that he became a priest is proof that Catholics cannot be trusted.
I'd chosen not to participate. Yet from the moment I became the topic of discussion, it's my duty to speak. Sidonius is right. Ambitious, lustful, narcissistic. I was all of these things. God gave me a mother. She showed me that nothing in this material world is worthy of our ambition. God gave me a woman. She showed me that loving means renouncing oneself. God gave me a son. I started to believe that he was created in my image. Then God took him away from me to show me he was created in his image. Ambitious, lustful, narcissistic. I was all these things, and still am, as we all are. as we all are. But not one of us is alone. Ever. Not even when we're in desperation, bitterness, darkness. God is close to us. God is more brother than any brother. He's more friend than any friend. More lover than any lover.
Sunlight fell, it reminded me that life can be so gracious sometimes. And I felt like everything around me was connected somehow. At night I hear the rhythm of the ocean as it breaks on the shore. And I think about all the things that I am grateful for. And they say, hold on to the ones you love, keep them close to you. And they say, hold on to this time we have, and let the light shine through. Sometimes I get a little bit emotional when I see love unfold. Two hearts bound by reflections of the memories they'll forever hold. And they say, hold on to the ones you love, keep them close to you. They say, hold on to this time we have, and let the light shine through. They say, hold on to the ones you love, keep them close to best that we have, and let the light shine through.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with the bare bodkin? Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience doth make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought,
so
and enterprises of great pith
both
and
the teams
moment.
are around.
With this
Just to
regard, there
confirm, I am saying Prosper. I'm not saying Shanis. I'm not saying I'm saying Jesse. I'm not saying Raima. Jesse, just confirm you're getting the feedback on behalf of your team.
Yeah, I'll get the feedback. Get it.
All right, Prosper, I can see Shanis, just a confirmation that you'll be getting feedback for the team. I can't see Steve either way.
Okay, yeah, I will be getting feedback for the team.
All right, so how we are going to go over the feedback? Well, I think Henry is just going to go over what happened in the debate, what transpired, and then I will say what could have been done better, and then Gareth will conclude by giving you your speaker feedback and what should have been done better still. So I'm just going to go over argumentation. Henry is going to show you how best your arguments could have been better, but then yeah, I think that's what is going to be done. So Henry is going to go first.
So hi guys. So I'm personally just gonna give feedback on what happened in the round, and I'm just going to summarize this and then just explain what things did not make sense in the round, like what things needed to have made sense in the round, and things that were jumping around. I'm just gonna start on a high note. I'm like really a straight person, I feel there was a lot that was generally missing in the round. I think it's not enough that teams just mechanize and left things there for us to understand. It's not just about cramming the structure. It's the point of argumentation is to make sure that the argument is in its most absolute understandable way possible. If you can't make that argument understandable, like if you can't really give us a correlation how you reach point X to point Y, it's not really much of a persuasive argument. So let's not focus on just making arguments. The fact that they are, one, realistic, and two, persuasive. I think Denise will do. I think Denise and Gareth will probably tell you something around that. So what happens in the debate? What happens in the debate is that the short version of everything is that Prop says, see, the thing is, education is expensive, so people cannot get access to that education. Even when people get access to education, they mainly fall out. So they say that it's better to have a world where people pay for that education later. So they say these individuals stand for two things. They stand for, first of all, maximizing profit, but they also stand for being able to ensure quality education. Now, they say that because of this, and really I don't get much of a reason why this is true, why institutions are inclined and built that way, we would just went with the flow anyways. So they say that in their world, they get a more innovative approach to make sure that people have an incentive to work hard under two things: working hard to get results and working hard when they get good work. So they said that the current world thrives around things like people getting employment straight from university. They say that because of that, people generally get effort, like put in effort, are going to put in more effort to be able to get jobs so they can be able to pay back these loans. Two, they say people are going to work hard to get good grades so they can be able to qualify for those. So you get academic excellence, but two, you get efficient people who are probably going to get workers on the job. So I think you get efficiency on their side. The comparative you get from Raima is an explanation on how you don't get good grades on their end. What I don't understand now is you say that these individuals don't get good grades, yet they are the ones that generally have the money that facilitates the good grades. I think I needed a further explanation as to how your world is important, especially in a world where not most of the money is generally gotten. That's the concession from the first speeches. Let's ignore the first two. That's the first concession we get in the debate. So the concession is you need money to run things and the money is not enough. But that's something that I don't know if government neglected it or ignored it, but it wasn't really touched. They go on further to explain why it is important to do most of these things, right? They go on to explain why most of the things are either not exclusive or why the world's probably not given in their regard. Generally, the basis and the crux of government case is that for them, they want to create a world where people are very much efficient, but secondly, can be able to get enough jobs to pay back that loan. Now, I think a few things that I think came from Bob were, one, they challenged the ability of these individuals to get jobs because there's a concession of unemployment. Two, they challenged the concept of these individuals being able to procure a quality education because you need the money to be able to provide it. Three, they ask for alternatives that come out probably around in the third speech and second speech around there, between second and third, around what you can do apart from being able to have these loans. I don't get a complete explanation from Prop as to why and how these things are generally going to compensate for the money that is being lost, because according to OP, you are losing a lot of money when you don't have people paying tuition. So how do you then reimburse that money to do all this? It's not enough to say that there is money. Why is that money enough to probably cater for those problems? Two, I think there's a contradiction here. If you say that these universities stand for maximizing profits and again stand for quality education, you need to draw the line to explain why someone who cares about the profits for some reason now is going to trying to care about individuals that get quality education. especially when in Prop's case, there is a highlight. I think it was a one-liner, but was repeated, I think around 3 times, around the concept of these individuals have a name and a reputation. So they don't really so much moved by the concept of failing students. The goal that they're able to probably do this for students is goodwill. Now, it's still not making sense. You want individuals to be maximize their quality education, but at the same time you say these guys have an incentive to do better. But then again, you say that these individuals, for some reason, now don't care about don't care about you if you fail because you already have a reputation. I think the more persuasive thing now looks like what comes from up. Since we say they don't care about, since they only care about their reputation, it means the only thing that is left to care about is money. The money that you are taking out of the equation. How in the world are you then going to ensure that these students thrive better? But even then, how are you going to ensure that everybody gets a job if unemployment already exists? What mechanisms are in place that universities have to ensure that these jobs are gotten? So the problem is, I think why Prop on our side, and I think Denise will also give the verdict, why Prop ended up the way it did and why Op ended up the way it did is because one side failed to really answer the questions that came from proposition, which were very crucial, which came from one of the other sides. And these questions were very pivotal in helping us understand where the debate was really headed. Because you need to understand most of these things. I think you get more when you have knives or fists. I think over to Denise or Gareth. Yeah, over to you guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Henry. So I'll just go over what you could have done better, and then Gareth will conclude with the entire feedback. So, unanimously, Op won this debate and Prop lost to Op. Okay, Prop came in second to Op. So why is this true, and why did we feel, just like Henry has given you the overview of the debate, we felt that there was a sort of mechanization that was missing on both sides. But I'll just start with Prop and then go over to Op. Because when Raima begins her speech, she tells you, it's a claim that one, we think that you're going to increase the quality of education when you sort of have this income, or when you sort of relieve these students from the kind of hurdle that they are having, right? And we do not get as to why that is true. Because when you say that, you know what, you're going to have economic equality existing, but then having quality of education improved, then why is that true? So you need to show that education necessarily now is affordable to everyone, which they show. But then too, we think that there is a certain mechanization that was missing. So what could have been done better on that? So we think that then universities have an incentive to sort of create practical skills, or to foster practical skills within their students, because they know that if they're not able to get jobs, then necessarily they're not going to be able to pay back on time. So this looks like when you say that you're going to have like people enroll into social work, you're going to give them additional skills as a university. You're going to provide the necessary training. You're going to provide the necessary mentoring, or the training skills-based education, as to make sure that they're either creative, so that immediately they're out of school, they're able to access jobs, and then they're able to pay back these certain types of loans or anything. They're able to pay a significant portion from the economic benefits of either their education. So the university education now tends to change, because now you prioritize practical or relevant skills in the programs that you're enrolling these students in. And I think that was a very crucial thing that was missing, because you can't just ascertain that there is going to be quality education and you're going to have the economic burden then shifted from these homesteads or students, and then you're not able to show, you're not able to have a linkage as to why then that is true. So if you are able to show the kind of quality education that then comes out of this, that would be a plus. But then the second thing is that where you talk about the same thing, careers or anything, you could have talked about things like careers. Why? Because notice that you're going to emphasize like the practical skills that I talked about, and then be better prepared like for the job market, for both the graduates or even the employers that you're having, because you want them to compete favorably at the job market level. So we think that then that becomes important. Then when you talk about the equitable education, where you say that there is going to be an access of education to every student. So one is that you do not show a clear linkage or a reason as to why that is true. Most of these arguments then became assertions. Because if you say that the poor people or people from low income backgrounds are going to be able to access this, then why then should that be considered in the debate, given that OP comes and tells you that even the structures that this debate should exist in are structures like unemployment, where you're having unemployment, and say that, you know what, we do not think that this debate exists in a realm where you're going to have unemployment. We think that then that was an oversight on your side, because necessarily what OP tries to tell you is that, one, we think that even when these students are able to graduate, notice that they're going to be enrolled into courses that are even longer, 5 or even 6-year courses. When they get out of school, the reality hits back. You're not necessarily going to have the employment there and then even as a graduate, because there is limited job market for graduates that are going to graduate. Even they give scenarios of different universities. So you having that entire argument of, you know what, we think that unemployment is not supposed to be an issue in this debate, yet that is actually the reality, because they have to go out in the job market and have to search for these jobs to be able to pay back those loans. They show you that if it takes you 5 years or even 10 years to get these jobs, then the kind of interest rates that are going to be on these students is even going to be a bigger burden as compared to what would have been a burden when they were in school. So it becomes more problematic, the harms that are going to exist. That's why I started by saying what you could have done better is to show that universities are then incentivized to provide practical skills, which these students, when they get out of school, are able to do something for themselves. They're able to access jobs on any job market or anything, as compared to what you're saying, that, you know what, we think that recommendations are going to be there. They are strong alumni. They are strong. And that was very problematic in the debate, because they show you that even with government structures trying to support such programs, it has been hard for them to even create quotas. Then how is it possible that all these students who are financially incapacitated are going to be able to access this? They already show you the kind of limitations that are existing on those structures in status quo. But then what you needed to show is that, one, when you have such where students are accessing quality, and this is more an impact, we felt that your impact was lacking, because then what happens? So show a society that is actually going to have personal development or advancement where you have equality, because most of the problems tend to come or stem from the kind of education that then these individuals access. So if they're able to access like an eco access eco education, or even the quality of education, show the competition, what it does to the economy, social aspects of lives, and everything. So on the impact level, your mechanization was lacking still. Then what could OP have done better? So notice this is something they tried to say, but then it is like a one-liner, just like Henry says, where you talk about the decreased funding for universities, where maybe the government doesn't have enough money, or the alumni, or everything that Prop was claiming. So if you're going to face a financial challenge, then universities are also going to struggle to maintain that kind of consistent revenue. Notice like this is going to still impact the quality of education that then Prop fronts. Because if Prop says there is going to be a quality of education, and then the university's income stream is not enough to sustain the kind of quality education, then there is going to be a backlash in the kind of services and in the kind of quality of education that is provided. So universities in status quo heavily rely on the kind of tuition fees for things like operational expenses. Everything that runs in the university, most of the times entirely runs on that, right? So if you shift their income, then you're going to disrupt the kind of financial stability that then exists So then you have to show that linkage between having financial instability and the kind of services you're going to offer, or even the kind of education that you're going to offer. So you could negatively affect the entire education system, and that becomes problematic. But what you did in your speeches, I think Prosper and Shanis, what you did in your speeches was just to show that, you know what, we think that the income stream is not sustainable that Prop talks about. Then if it is not sustainable, so what? So that kind of analysis was lacking. So you need to show me that if there is financial instability, the services provided by the universities are going to be affected, and the quality education that then Prop wants to front does not necessarily exist. Then the second thing, we think that education most of the times is like sort of a personal responsibility. So if you're having studied for free or anything, there is a way you can evade even when you're in a system and then there is no employment opportunity for you or anything. So notice the kind of lack of accountability or incentive to be responsible for things like financial planning. So you see students who are able, even from a low income background or anything, even on that scheme, they are forced to have a certain level of accountability, financial planning, but then that does not exist if you bring on this scheme. Because if you look at the existing status quo, it encourages students to consider the financial implications of their education, but then also the kind of financial literacy that then comes with this. So if you do not face the immediate consequences of your financial choices, then you're most likely to have not good decisions regarding your education or anything else. So that could have been an argument from up in regards to financial literacy and how it helps in all this. Then 3, and this is something that was also a one-liner where you talk about, from opposition, where you talk about governments having to continuously borrow to sustain their education systems. So if you are able to show me that a kind of potential increased debt that is going to exist is going to have the government or even the schemes that they're talking about have additional responsibilities. Like an alumni network is already contributing maybe to the university, but then why are you adding them like this kind of additional responsibility? If they are not able to, then the government takes on the burden, just like they had said, like Justice says in his speech. So the potential of increasing a public debt, then to compensate the kind of graduates that then you're having, leaves the country highly indebted or anything. So you talk about what comes with being highly indebted as a country and why it is very bad for that. Then, so we think that then the incentive, even in status quo for other career paths where you're going to discourage individuals from pursuing maybe higher paying professions because they took long. Because if you're going to be in school for 5 years, you're going to look at the burden of not getting an employment opportunity to actually pay that loan as soon as you're done. So individuals are going to take like a lighter path or courses that are going to be few years, 2 or 3 years or anything, in order to just get into the job market and be able to clear that kind of loan that is existing and the pressure. So we felt that largely from both sides, there was a level of mechanization that was missing, but also on the impacts, they were not clearly analyzed as how they should have been, how should I call it, in terms of comparison. The way-ups were not really good from both sides. But that is what you could have done better from both prop and op. And we felt that prop actually does not do any sort of engagement with what OP tries to bring on table. Yeah. Thank you. Over to you, Gareth.
Okay. Thank you. To just do what they call it, speaker feedback, I suppose. And most of the things that have been said plagued all the issues that have been brought up by Henry and Denise were like miniaturized versions of the wider issues within each speaker's whatever submission and all that stuff. One glaring thing was that there was no semblance of proper reply speeches. I don't know if that can be conveyed to the people who whatever submitted the reply speeches. A reply speech is not an extension of a main speech and all that stuff. Yes, you're supposed to respond to the things that were said in your opponent's team case and whatnot, but you're not supposed to give like proper rebuttals, in the sense that you're not supposed to give a full-on rebuttal to a point that was made in one of the main speeches in your reply speech. You're supposed to use what has been said by your team, and like put it on a weighing scale with the corresponding argument and all that stuff. Basically, one way this could have been done in the reply speeches, reply speaker, you should have weighed the issue of unemployment against the idea from proposition that these people are going to be able to pay back loans, not loans, pay back these incomes that are outstanding to the universities and all that stuff. You should have emphasized that because you guys said unemployment is a big issue, and that was subsequently conceded to by one of the prop speakers. You should have put that against. You should have put the 2 points against each other and said, okay, this is what we said, this is what they said, and this is specifically why we won this particular argument and all that stuff. That wasn't done properly in the reply speeches. So yeah, reevaluate how you guys are doing reply speeches and like improve on that, because in reply speeches in this particular format can be really important, because you can actually convince a judge in rare instances that you have done better than your opponent team in the event that the debate has been close. And it wasn't particularly close, and that was not because one team was better than the other. It was because there were mistakes that were more grave on prop side that still could have been made on op side if they were proposition as well. So yeah. So starting with proposition speaker one, kudos to having like proper structure with setting out what your team is coming out to do, and case splitting and all that stuff. Even though the case split wasn't really followed, opposition one did not have a case split, and that is also important on opposition side to like really set out what your position. You do not necessarily have an obligation on opposition to have positive matter in a condensed form like proposition does, but at least have something prepared as an alternative to whatever proposition is going to bring, and offer it in your first speech. On case splitting or a prop one, you did well. Like I said, the biggest issue was not like I said, as has been said by Denise and Henry. The biggest issue was the fact that you could not connect what you were saying, your argument, with the benefit that you claimed your argument was going to bring and all that stuff. And I'm not going to repeat myself about that. Yeah. Op one, basically I've said you need to have a case split as well, and you need to have better structure. When you, as a first speaker, you need to have like a model speech that sets the tone for the speakers that are coming. Don't just pepper us with like rebuttals with lots of things and all that stuff. Make sure you are condensed and accurate and concise with what you're saying. You're supposed to have rebuttal, but still have articulate your positive matter, even though it's not in such a detailed form, because your other speakers are going to do that. Then prop two, who also incidentally was prop three. Yeah, the same thing about not having a link between your argument and the benefit you claim. One critique that I noted down, even though it was not provided by opposition, was that you said that this model was going to enable people who specifically do not have the money to go to universities to have that opportunity to go to universities. But you never distinguished how, you never provided a mechanism how your policy would distinguish people who are poor and need this particular system from those who are going to what from those who already have the money and would just be taking advantage of the system because they qualify in some way or form. You critiqued the fact that that government scholarships tend to go to people who go to the best schools and whatnot and have very or have very good grades, they come from rich families and all that stuff. The same thing could easily have been levied to you because you never provided a way that you're going to distinguish how these poor people are going to be. You never distinguished how you never said how you were going to distinguish poor people from those who actually have the means in this particular system. And either way, you did not justify why it's only people who are poor who should benefit from this system, because you set out two extremes. You put, people who are poor and people who are rich, but there are lots of people in the middle ground and all that stuff who could potentially stand to benefit from the system if properly implemented and all that stuff. But you ignored them. You were focusing on the extreme, which is good. Yes, look at the most vulnerable actor and whatnot, but there's still a huge percentage of people that would be excluded if you were saying this is specific to these people who are poor and whatnot. And either way, you do not show how that was going to be distinguished in any case. So that particularly fell flat and whatnot. So prop 2 and incidentally prop 3, please look at the way you are crafting your arguments. And when you're responding, please be mindful of not contradicting yourself in your speeches and all that stuff. What else? Yeah. Up to I think up to for me personally was, I think, the decent speaker in this debate, because they introduced the what you call it, the issues with Prop's case more firmly than proposition opposition one had done so. Opposition one mentioned unemployment and all that stuff, but left a lot of things that Prop one had mentioned about quality education and accessibility alone. And even though if you were not going to deal with them, it goes back to the case, but you should have noticed that these things are important, that proposition flagged that were going to be the main arguments, and said if you are not going to engage with them, you're going to delegate them to your other speakers. And that comes with a proper case split, which Op1 did do. So Op2 came and did that, and that's where the debate really started to happen and all that stuff. Same critics as everyone, up to more analysis, link your arguments. Not necessarily link your argument to the detriment that you're citing is going to be on the opposite side. Benefits is mostly proposition stuff. You're supposed to link your argument to the detriment that you're saying exists in the asset. And that is to like extract for the most part. That's all that I'm going to say at this point in time. Thank you, guys, for I wouldn't say good debate, but thank you for the effort. One thing is that all of you guys, if they're still here anyway, are proficient speakers. If there were points being given in style, you'd get good points in style, but that's not really important if what you're saying is not making sense or if it's weak and all that stuff. So yeah, lots of areas to improve and whatnot. That's it from me.
All right. Thank you so much, Gareth and Henry. And yeah, best of luck to all of you in the trials. See you in the next spa.